Okay. I'm going to get started because there's a lot of information to share tonight, and I don't want us to get behind. Firstly, I'd like to welcome everyone. We're absolutely delighted that you could join us this evening for our webinar, Embracing Neurodiversity, Building Inclusive Pathways to Success in the Workplace. We're very excited to host this webinar during Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Because really we want to recognize the talents and strengths of being neurodivergent and share information and resources with you all to really help that transition that many of our kids have to go on from school to higher education or to the workplace. When I talked to Louise, who's one of our speakers here tonight, she's waving, I said to her, as a Camp Kirk parent and as a psychotherapist, what do parents want to hear? Because many of us here tonight are parents. And she used the simple word hope. So tonight is about hope and possibilities. Before I pass it over to Paul, I would like to point out a couple of housekeeping. We are recording this session. It will be sent out to all attendees. The speakers have also kindly offered for us to share their emails as well. So if we don't get a chance to answer your questions here this evening, we will be sharing in an email after tonight all of the speakers' information. So we sincerely thank our speakers for that. We also wanted to thank all of our speakers for giving of their time, because it is a lot of time to organize a webinar like this, preparing the slides, researching, making sure the information is accurate. So really excited to welcome everyone. And before I pass it on to Paul, and each speaker will give their own bio and introduction, I'd like to acknowledge the lands that Camp Kirk operates on. And it's the traditional territory of the Michi, Sagae, and Chippewa nations covered by the Williams Treaties. Those of you may know that's in the Kawartha Lakes. And I thought it was really beautiful when I read what the English translation was for Kawarthas. And it's shining waters and happy lands. And I felt that was such a great place to be able to have Camp Kirk and bring our campers to every year. And not only do Camp Kirk canoes, but many canoes have traversed these waterways. And we recognize and respect the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on these lands. In their honor, we commit to being stewards of the natural environment and to providing services that are welcoming, safe, culturally appropriate, and inclusive. So without further ado, I would love to pass it over to Paul, and he's going to start the webinar tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deirdre. So yeah, I'm going to be covering basically the path through high school and then how to best support kids in terms of building their skills and to help them transition successfully out of high school to whatever their destination is. So just to give a little bit of background on me, worked as a CERT and a guidance counselor in Oakville. And I'm currently working in child and adolescent psychiatric inpatient unit in the Oakville Hospital. And over my career, I have specialized in special education, specifically with neurodivergent learners. Always got along best with the ADHD and autistic students, and now I know why. So anyway, I myself am diagnosed with ADHD, and both run in my family. So. Okay, so what I'm going to be covering today is generally about skill building, the reason for it, some of the ways that that I have done it in the past in my experience, and some of the things that I've seen in my job at the hospital as well. And then looking at transition planning. So, successful transitions into school, successful transitions through high school, and then how to build the skills that our kids are going to need in order to support themselves and to thrive once they graduate, which is, I think, something as a parent of neurodivergent kids that I worry about too. So first step is looking at just getting support in school. So this covers because ADHD, for example, can qualify for an IEP in some boards, but not in others. So school supports might not be in the form of an IEP if your child has ADHD, for example, but no learning disability or autism or behavior profile to go with it. And there are supports in school from student success teachers and guidance counselors that can help access accommodations. I know for my school board, for example, accommodations like extra time and alternate location can be done through a student success profile, not necessarily through an IEP. If your child has an IEP, then they'll have a cert assigned to them. So they won't need the student success teacher to do that. The cert should be providing a lot of those supports, and just an idea that you'll be getting a formal opportunity to modify that IEP. A lot of times they do stay stagnant if they're established early in childhood. So try to involve your child in this process. We try to do that as a skill building thing with high school students with grade 9s, grade 10s, to try and involve them in updating their IEP so that they have seen it and they know what's on it. And again, the goal being to build that awareness and the ability to advocate for themselves as they develop and mature. So one of the things that I look at with neurodivergent kids is to learn about their brain. And this is one of the things for any of you who have a child who was diagnosed later, maybe in their teenage years. A lot of times they're searching for an explanation, and learning a bit about the biology can help with that. And, that's going to be dependent on their age, depending on, their ability to understand the stuff, how this is presented. But the key thing is that the biology of their brain, the brain chemistry, the structure, that sort of thing is not within their control. So that means that it's not a personal failing. So if you have ADHD and you struggle with organization, it's not a personal failure. If you're autistic and you have a difficulty reading people and their intentions, then that is not a personal failing. That is a matter of biology. So understanding your brain, that can help you to find the strategies that do work for you, because a lot of the times in school, the things that do get taught are meant to work for neurotypical kids and not necessarily for neurodivergent kids. So once you understand your brain, then you can start looking at strategies that might work better for you. And then you can also learn about and potentially accept the various treatment options. ADHD is a very treatable condition, for example, that for many people will respond well to a lot of the medications that are out there, and things like therapy can help with learning to manage emotions and regulate things like that. The psychosocial component of this is just basically that understanding your brain. It gives you an explanation, but it doesn't give you an excuse. So you can't, you can't override a lot of the expectations of employers or the expectation of schools, things like that. But we also have to understand that the anxieties and challenges that are related to neurodiversity are very much real and very much valid. And this is my the DBT training that I've been doing since working in the hospital. Is the idea of accepting that two things can be true at the same time. So you can have challenges related to your neurodiversity, and there are ways that you can learn to help manage their impact, and specifically learn how they impact your ability to cope, your ability to form and maintain healthy relationships, and to maintain your own mental health. Okay, so why the focus on skill building? This started to come up pretty recently. We were looking at talking about AI and how it was changing the workforce. And I actually ended up seeing this on a TikTok, and I was like, I've got to check, I got to check the source on this. And I went and found the report, and I'll show you the graph in a second. The report's linked on here. But the skills that are rated as being most crucial in the workplace are often more challenging for neurodivergent kids, such as time management, prioritizing, collaboration, effective communication. Flexibility is on there as number 5. I didn't have space to include it. And the things that may come more naturally to some of them, like understanding systems and technology and working in STEM, are becoming less crucial as AI takes hold in a lot of workplaces. So even though these are difficult, this does not mean that they are necessarily impossible. And a lot of times knowing what we struggle with and knowing what things are challenging can allow us to specifically target and work on those skills. So one of the biggest ones for my autistic students, and I do this with my son all the time, is understanding the differences in communication styles. So how someone else might speak and how that might be different from your speech, and what they are saying literally does not mean what they are implying. And just basically the awareness of that can help avoid conflict in the future. And then the other big one is learning to communicate needs during times of calm. Don't try and fix the problem. while emotions are high during times of stress, really learning to communicate needs during times of calm so that you can access them, in an easier way. So this is the graph that made me fall out of my chair pretty much. Just looking at how crucial skills, these are employers rating skills in terms of which ones they rated as the most important in what they're looking for in their employees, and just how this has changed since 2016, and realizing that a lot of times by the time we've updated curriculum and by the time teachers have updated their work, sometimes they are teaching to things that are no longer in demand. And just being able to work with other people and communicate effectively with other people is once again becoming a priority. And proficiency in STEM, I couldn't believe how far that had fallen down in basic computer and application and software skills. Those things falling down. Flexibility, agility, and adaptable to change. Like these are things that are going to be challenging, but they are things that can be learned. So how skill growth can be facilitated in school. This was one that came up from feedback from parents and feedback from students in terms of wanting to build their self-advocacy skills, but not knowing how. So we try to start this early in grade 9. So a GLE or a GLS learning strategies course, for those of you who aren't in Ontario or who may have not had kids who are taking these courses. A learning strategies course is a course that's opened up to special education students with an IEP. GLS is an option if a student doesn't have an IEP, and GLE is the option if they do. And they are credit-bearing courses. And the idea with this is that they're learning school skills, explicitly taught students, studenting kind of skills, adulting skills too are in there. But we have them initiate communication with their teachers. So we do it as an assignment. So we evaluate their ability to open the lines of communication by introducing themselves, talking about who they are, what their needs are, what that plan will look like. And we get that done right at the beginning of the year. And often opening the lines of communication early allows that teacher to now communicate things directly with the student. And we actually say, like, I will be evaluating you on this, just copy me on any messages. For students who are away, for example, I will evaluate them on whether they reached out to their teacher to say, hey, what did I miss? Those kinds of things. And giving them opportunities to practice the skill with support, rather than taking that opportunity away from them. There are a lot of students who do want to learn these skills, but they don't know how to communicate that. And giving them the opportunities and saying, okay, like, let's role play this, or would you like me to tell the teacher in advance what your intent is, and to let them know that you're coming, so that they're receptive and that they know that this is hard for you, but that you're learning how to practice, just to change that expectation so they know what to expect, to take those unknowns away. Communication skills can also be practiced in GLE classes. They're generally more neurodiverse, and that can make communication easier to practice. We do have some impulsivity issues. So we do try to encourage everyone to reserve judgment. Don't impulsively call out, like, don't do that, that's weird, something like that, right? So making sure that everybody feels like they can be themselves and they can build those skills together without being judged is important. And then I just talked about the role play as well. Okay, so understanding communication differences. I just gave one example with this, but there are other things that you can teach with this. But just learning about the idea of implied meaning. So neurotypical people use this kind of stuff all the time. And where I started to notice this was like some of my autistic students saying that they don't know how to make friends, and there were these opportunities all around them that they just weren't seeing, because the communication, in order to avoid in order to be polite, I guess, social custom, they were being vague on purpose. So they would say, oh, what are you doing after school today? And the student would say, oh, I'm reading my I'm reading my comic book, for example, or I'm reading my graphic novel. And they would just answer that question literally, and the person would be put off, and just like they would miss an opportunity to potentially build a friendship. Like the person was asking you because they wanted to know what you were doing, because they wanted to do something together potentially. And they don't realize that they're looking for you to not answer that question. They're looking for you to say oh, I'm not really sure. What are you thinking of doing? Did you want to come over? Like that kind of stuff. So Just learning that those kinds of implied meanings exist in neurotypical communication and how to be aware of it. And this can be taught overtly. Sarcasm is one, being vague to be polite. Just to understand why someone would respond with saying, oh, that's actually quite rude. A lot of times we say rude, but we don't really explain why, so the person might not know. And then things like euphemisms as well. Okay, this was something that I did. I'm not going to explain the entire thing. I just want to make sure that I'm being cognizant of my timing here. But this was something that I did in my science classes, and I would do visibly random groups. So the groups would be randomized every single day. And so every day the kids could check in the morning. I would randomize it every day at 7 o'clock, and they could go on a website and see where they were sitting, who they were sitting with. And this was, as much as it seems like it's a lot of change, it was very predictable. And I went over this with all of my neurodivergent students beforehand to say, like, this is how I'm doing it. It's like I'm putting it up early. So if you want to know who you're sitting with, we also gave opportunities if there were certain people that were incompatible with each other. So we made sure that if it randomized and it happened to pair them together with someone who maybe bullied them in elementary school, we would just run the randomization again until it didn't do that. But this was a way to practice group skills. And one of the problems with seating plans is that we can burn out with people. So we can get there's tension that comes from that, and sometimes being pairing a student who needs to build their social skills with someone who's really, really nice all the time, sometimes you can end up burning out that student, and creating conflict with one of the only nice kids in the class. Whereas this kind of spreads things out, and people are forced to work together, and they're forced to learn how to work alongside other people. One of the things that I did as well was evaluating group work for the sake of group work. So I was actually evaluating them on their ability to collaborate. And one of the things that I found out is that kids didn't know how to work together in groups. This was post-COVID. And we specifically identified roles. So each person chose one of the set roles, and we modeled what that was, and that was what they were being evaluated on, as well as their ability to work together. So there are different options with this, but this was one of the ones that I chose. And as chaotic as it seems, it actually worked really, really well for building collaboration skills. And this is what I'm saying. Sorry, that collaboration is a skill, and it can't be assumed to be a competency. And that's what a lot of high school teachers do. So I took away the grade pressures. We didn't do this for a group project, for example. When you put academic pressures on it, it can stress other kids out. And it can make them choose to not want to work with someone because they're worried about their grades. And by taking that away, all of a sudden now you take that pressure, and kids can actually have a chance to build their social skills and have a chance to work with people who are different from themselves. And that was the burnout piece that I was talking about. Okay, I've got 1 minute. Awesome. For executive functioning skills, this is me talking about like deadlines being necessary for ADHD. For example, flexibility being needed but not being infinite. So I'm going to move forward on this because I think what a lot of people are wondering about is looking at transitioning out of high school. So with this one, as your child goes through high school, the biggest thing is trying to explore many different things to try and find what they're passionate about, and then to try and pursue things that they're passionate about. There are alternative options as well. So if they wanted to know about a specific workplace, co-op can have them go out and work in a workplace in order to see what that career looks like. OEAP programs, if you have a child who wants to go into the trades, it gives them a chance to start early. And specialized classes, if you've got a kid who's interested in something, this lets them do up to half of their classes in that particular field. Likewise for specialist high skills majors. Again, these are Ontario specific. So, but I would imagine that these are things that are happening elsewhere. And then this is probably the most important one. So I am going to spend a little bit of time here, and hopefully I don't step on any toes. One of the biggest things is that IEP supports end after high school, and that can be a terrifying thing. So there are supports in post-secondary institutions. This is an Ontario-specific website, transitionresourceguide.ca. This is a really good one to have access to, and it's a good one for parents to go through with their child, because the role of support coordinator is going to shift from parent to child as they become an adult. So this is something that is terrifying if it happens. Surprising. That's why I've got the torch over here, is because of the passing of the torch. So explore these things together, and this is meant to reduce barriers. So you have email addresses and phone numbers and people's names for who to contact and what the special education support center is called at that particular school. So all of this information, they have documentation requirements, timelines, printable checklists, you name it. And they also list what accommodations are available. Universities and colleges, at least in Ontario, are actually better at accommodating these things than high schools and elementary schools are a lot of the time. ADHD is much better supported in post-secondary than it is in school. So they can provide notes and recordings for lectures, extra time, and alternate locations for exams, alternate formats. And my favorite, this is the best one of all, and this is coming along for those of you who know Dr. Jonathan Weiss, who works at York University as a professor, one of the leading experts on autism and mental health. And York U was one of the pioneers with this, but they have an autistic mentoring program where autistic students who are incoming to an undergraduate program at York are paired with a senior autistic student who can help guide them through, many of the challenges that come with adjusting to life. I wanted to check some of the colleges as well to see if they have anything. And there's a transition support center at Algonquin College. It's kind of like a club where neurodivergent kids will meet and discuss some of the stuff they're going through. So that's all I've got. Thank you guys so much. And just a tiny bit of Seth, yes. Anyway, I will transition on. Oh, and this one here, I'm including this just if people want to go back and see this, but assessments for post-secondary support usually need to be within 3 years. So if you're, if you're looking to get a support, an assessment done in high school, try and delay it if you can till grade 11 or 12 so that you don't have to do it again. They have to be recent in order to apply. ADHD, as long as you're being supported ongoing by a doctor of some kind, that doctor just fills out a package that's easier to do. But an autism assessment requires a formal diagnosis within 3 years of applying. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll pass it over to Julie.
Paul, that was awesome. And honestly, like there's so much I want to say because of what you just said, but I got to focus on what I'm going to do, which is also difficult because, apple tree. Actually, I wish this brand is by a couple of dudes with autism who have really great merch about being atypical. And I'd love to give them a shout out right now, but can't remember. Maybe I can put it in the show notes, as they say. Okay, so yeah, I think we're just gonna go ahead. I'm trying to think what my first slide was. Oh, this is a bit about me. So I'm the co-founder of Mabels Labels. I have some neurodiverse kids. I write books. Our label company's like 21 years old, so I've been around for a while. I think now I've gone up to 3 children who are neurodivergent. It feels like every day I'm getting more and more. Lucky me. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about a little bit about Mabels Labels and how that has worked for us. So I think just by way of background. So Mabels Labels, why? Why did this company start? Why did I start this with my co-founders? And there are a couple of reasons. I think whenever we do anything, we got to know our why. One was that there was a product missing from the market. We were young moms, we were losing stuff, permanent marker, masking tape didn't work. But the second reason was that my eldest child was 3.3 and he just got diagnosed with autism. And I was a lawyer and I didn't actually think that the traditional workforce was going to suit my lifestyle any longer. I wanted to be able to advocate for him. I was like the, 40 hours a week, baby, love it or hate it. It was great for us. Entire family knew what was on his program. Everybody was trained. Everybody had required reading. I was that guy. So I just thought at that point, okay, gals, my co-founders, my sister, a couple other relatives, we had this really great idea. I want to do a shift. I need to pivot here because of my kiddo. What do you think? And honestly, I mean, he already had 2 younger siblings, so it was already pretty hectic. So that was the why. And I do want to say that I'm not sure where the next slide is. Maybe pull it up ahead. Yeah. That's right. Know your why. And I will say that, as time passed and the company has experienced, a lot of success, right? Like we now have 50 full-time employees. We're in a 20,000 square foot facility. It's been great. But I also like to say that And also maybe I said I was going to wink when and now. So we've got, it's been a great run. And I also do want to mention that my son, Mac, now, because he was 3 when we started, he's 24. I know. How could I have a 24-year-old, right, Louise? Yeah. All our babies are growing up. So, he also has had some success. He's, we've worked hard. We were lucky in high school in that he totally found a nerd crew. Like it was his birthday, November of grade 9. I said, do you want to have like a party? Do you want to do something? Do you know anyone? And he said, oh yes, I'd like to invite these 6 boys. And these boys turned up and it was like Big Bang Theory all over my house. Like they brought actual screens. They rocked up with actual screens. So he found his crew and they were awesome. In fact, so much. Oh no, I should stick to my storytelling. Oh, thanks, Tara. So yeah, he graduated from the University of Guelph. Well, yeah, we'll hang there for a sec, Tara. He graduated from the University of Guelph, like a year ago, and then he backpacked around Australia, caught up with his sister Posey, who's living there. He backpacked around on his own. He's got a black belt. He's a lifeguard. He has a license. He's going back to school in September. He had a date today. We'll talk about that. And so he's done well. And I often joke that, on my deathbed, he'll be like my life's greatest achievement, and the other 5 are okay too. But I will say that although it's been a great ride and I've learned a lot, it's not always been easy. I mean, when he started university, the first year that black and white thinking, he was like, oh, I don't want any accommodations because it's not fair. And I'm like, how is it not fair? He's like, it's not, I shouldn't. Anyway, he failed a couple courses. Then, I picked him up for Christmas and he's like, why didn't I listen to my mother? And I'm like, you're not the first teenager who's never listened to their mother. So, and he's worked all through university. He had an executive functioning coach on Zoom, and COVID did not help. That kid was like living in a basement in Guelph and having no social. It was a bit of a disaster, quite frankly, but we got out of it, and here we are now. But I know Paul is really the expert on that. So let's talk about Mabels Labels. Let's go there. Let's do that slide switch now. And one of the beautiful things about starting a company is that you're kind of the boss and you get to create the culture that you want. And for us, inclusivity was a huge part of that. And not just people who are neurodivergent. It was, and actually in those early days, and Lou will remember this, I mean, we were busy moms. We had loads of kids. So a big part of it for me also was about making a workplace that didn't make people feel like that they were judged for being good parents. So I knew that I could build a company, doing business plans during play dates or changing diapers and changing the world. So we never really judge people on their presenteeism, right? Like if you get your job done, then we're happy with you. Just be productive, and that can happen in strange places and at weird times, and that's okay. And there's this thing called sludge when we talk about a results only work environment, and that is, imagine you're like driving to work, you've already gotten up an hour before the kids, so you get showered and get ready for work. Then you get one daycare drop off, you got to do one kindergarten drop off, somebody pukes, you got to take them home, clean them up, hopefully you have somewhere to drop them. You walk in the office at 10 a.m. and people look at you and say, nice of you to join us. And you're just like, oh, morale gone. So I didn't want an environment. We did not want that happening at Mabels Labels. So it doesn't. So because sludge is not inclusive. And obviously, like for me as a mom of a kid who was on spectrum, inclusivity was a big part of, like, neurodiversity was a big part of our inclusivity. And then on the next slide, you'll see here that we have our core values. And at Mabels Labels, like they just don't sit on a wall and post on a wall. Like we really bring them into everything we do. We actually hire and fire by them. When I have to make a decision and I'm like, I don't know what decision I may have to make right now. I don't know if I can make it. I don't know what to do. I'm confused. I'm torn. I just have to go to my core values and then they will answer the question for me. I remember one time a company wanted to do a collaboration with us, and this was in the early days, and it would have been big for us. It would have been a huge marketing coup, like to collaborate with this company, but they had an ingredient in their product that didn't sit well with me. And I was like, I don't think we can do it. And our marketing team was like, Julie, don't do this to us. I'm like, you guys, come on, let's go to the core values. And they're like, okay. And then this company actually flew out to meet us to say, hey, what's going on? Why can't we do this? And I was just like, to me, if it was like, and this is the day of mom bloggers, if any of our loyal customers were like, dude, you sold out, I would have just been heartbroken. I'm like, I can't do it. So we didn't. And the thing that I found is that if you stick by your core values, you always make the right decisions, you collaborate with the right people, and other opportunities that are actual fit turn up. Okay, next slide. Just want to throw this up there. This is my friend Kat from Bump and Hustle, who's a mama who well, in the old days, we met Louise. Louise would know her from the old days of blogging. So you need to practice what you preach here, like this is not lip service. You need to really know what you're doing, and it's not performative. You need to be intentional in everything you do around your core values, particularly when it comes to inclusivity. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so you want to be inclusive in your search. You want to be inclusive in your hiring practices, how your office is set up, how you honor and value your team. I will tell a couple of stories here. We have so in the early days, I actually have an auntie, my mom's youngest sister, Joan, who is like the favorite person in our family by far. And she was born with an intellectual disability. And we actually had a very good experience because all of her life, she just retired from the Hamilton School Board, where she worked in a classroom of kids for kids who were like medically fragile. And she would be there, and she was the gal who would like get their, if they had lunches or unstuck the dishwasher or just kind of help out, or if pizza orders had to be collected, she was your girl. Like everybody loves her. She's just super social. So in the summer, my grandma, she still lived with grandma, and she was like, oh, what are we going to do with Joan all summer? I said, why doesn't she come to Mabels Labels? So every day she came to Mabels Labels, and we saw what joy she brought to our community. She came, she collected the coffee mug. She loved shredding paper. That was our Joan. And we were just like, oh my gosh, we all love Joan. But actually, it's not just me because she's my auntie. Everybody loves Joan. And we're like, the value that she brought to our workplace, we're like, we're on something here. We got to bring this further. So I remember we had another guy, and he's been with us forever, and he actually deals with some neurodiversity and also some mental health stuff. And this guy, like we made assumptions, and I think assumptions happen. Anyway, this guy comes every busy season, every summer. It's got to be 15 years he's been coming to Mabels Labels. And this is the only job that he really does, because it's too much for him to work full-time, permanent. But just when we need him, he pops in, and he has just been the best. And I also do want to talk about Seth, because we all love Seth. This is Louise's son. So Louise called me one day, it was a mama call. We call each other about mom stuff all the time. She's got 4, I got 6, we got 10 between us. So we help each other out. So she messaged me, and she's like, Julie, I'm just like, poor old Seth, like such a great kid, but he can't get a summer job. He goes to interviews. He's had 5 interviews, and he can't get through the interview, and he sees his siblings getting jobs, and like, it's starting to break him down a bit. And do you have any ideas? And I was like, oh, not only do I have ideas, I've got a job for this kid. Are you kidding me? So she was like, what? That's not why I reached out. I'm like, I don't care why you reach out. I know Seth is going to be the guy at Mabels Labels this summer. So he came in for an interview. I think maybe we sent interview questions beforehand, or we didn't even, I think maybe when he came, maybe Maria, our HR person, just gave him a tour or whatever. And anyway, so he started. And this guy started, and it's a great job. Like, I've got some of my kids don't love it because they find it's not social enough. And some of my other kids love it because they put their podcasts in and they listen and they do their thing. And so for Seth, this was wild because what we learned, so our kids are like, we have all these summer employees, right? So he came in and he would scan in and he'd sit down. So we'd be like, okay, Seth, and we can see how productive everyone is, right? So the average number of orders that was packed up in an hour would be about 55. Twice, Seth did 110 in an hour. In fact, Mike, our operations manager, said that summer, Seth alone packed up 11% of our summer orders. You need to know we are a $20 million company a year in sales. So Seth was packing that stuff up. And the other thing was that Seth was going home and he had his own Excel spreadsheet to track his own success. So, this is the thing, like diversity is good for everyone. I'm going to go to the next slide. Not that I can really remember. Yeah, that's right. It's good for everyone because look, right there and then, Seth was good for my bottom line. And you know what I say to the HR company and the HR departments that didn't get him through those interviews and give him jobs? Thank you, but shame on you. Shame on you for using an interview as the sole measure of what somebody can do. Their loss was Mabels Labels' gain, but that is not good enough. So there is work to be done. So why is it good for everyone? Well, clearly it was good for my bottom line. You heard about Seth sending out 11% of labels that summer. Thanks, Louise. I probably owe you a drink. It would be boring if we're all the same. Do I want a boring workplace? Not particularly. Loyalty. I'm telling you, like that guy who comes in every busy season, every year, the loyalty that he has to our company is second to none. And you know what? Yeah. So sometimes training can take a little bit longer. Be patient. You get it back. Our team members who are neurodiverse or have exceptionalities have been diligent, loyal, and highly productive. And we have to check our assumptions. We assumed with our one, and also there were probably assumptions around Seth about they're going to be slow and steady. But then when you actually implement the measurements, you find out they are some of your best and most productive employees. And also the other thing with Seth is that he had fewer errors than most of the other kids who were packing up. So they're actually quicker with fewer errors. And you know why else diversity was good for me? It was good for my bottom line. And it was so fun to have just such a fun, dynamic team of different people. Okay, the other thing, come on, the mom perspective. I want yeah, you're good. That's my Mac at 8 years old. And I want my kid employed. I love my 6 kids, but I want them out eventually. I want an empty nest and I want him being a taxpayer. It was funny. I'd like to actually do like shame companies that don't do this well. And there was a kid with autism that Mac used to do group stuff with when he was younger. And he got a job at a local restaurant as a dishwasher. And he was a bit slow to start. And I heard that they were going to let him go. So I went on their Facebook page, or actually it was a restaurant Facebook page, and people were talking about how great this restaurant is. So I chimed in and said, the thing that I like about this restaurant, and the only reason I go there is that because I know that they have hired somebody who's neurodiverse and they're being patient and they're being kind and they're giving him time to catch up. And so they saw that. And they're like, oh, crap, guess we can't fire this kid. But guess what? They didn't fire him. And another week later, he was the fastest dishwasher in the house. So, sometimes you just have to. And I do believe that as a business leader and somebody in this space, it is my job. And I think we all have to. Today, I was at Sobeys, and the kid who was serving me was clearly neurodivergent. And he accidentally hit that I was paying cash rather than credit. And my bills are big. I mean, you know how many people I have. It was like $270, and that's going to get me like through till tomorrow. Anyway, I think he got very anxious about having to scan everything again. And he had a moment, and I thought he was going to cry. And I was like, hey, bud, you know what? This is no big deal. We got this. all these problems can be solved. I see a nice woman over there that I've seen in customer service. Let's go see if she can help us out here. We went over and she was like, oh yeah, buddy, don't worry. Let me call Mike down. He can sort this out for us. It's not a big deal. And you can see that he just was like the tears went away. He wasn't doing this anymore. And it all got sorted. And on the way out, I stopped to the old dame who was in customer service. And I just said, hey, look, I want you to let you know that how you dealt with him really made me so happy. And that makes me want to shop here. And that's going to make me tell people about this Sobeys location. And it just, as a mom of kiddos, like you just, thank you. I just can't thank you. And she was so happy. She goes, can you tell my manager? It's like 100% I'll tell your manager. So you know what? Let's keep other businesses in line and show them we appreciate when they do the right thing and call them out when they don't. And yes, sometimes there can be challenges, right? Like sometimes it takes patience, big deal. Sometimes you have to communicate and collaborate with agencies. That can take time, but it's an investment. They're on your side. They're a part of your team too. And they want your business to succeed, and they want the person that they're working with to succeed. You're all on the same team. And just remember, there can be other challenges like any other team member. Maybe they're not a fit. Like anytime these kind of things can happen, they can be like any other team member. If they're not a fit with your company, it's time to sit down, meet, discuss, put a plan together. And that's okay. Switch. And I'm going to hang around. So if you have any other questions or if you want your kids to have summer jobs, I'm your gal. Louise, are you there, darling?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, up you go, girl.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julie. Thanks for bringing us up to such a high. And thanks for reliving that story about my guy. That was so special and so nice. Thank you so much. So I'll give a little intro about what I'm bringing to tonight's webinar. My name is Louise. I'm a registered psychotherapist. So now you're going to hear about what's happening to our wonderful neurodivergent population when they aren't supported in the workplace and how that ripples out into our communities at large. I think it's a really important topic. It may not come across as joyful as Julie's, but I still think it's really important that we spend some time, learning about what's happening out there. Not yet, Tara, go back. I'm a counselor who works with adults, couples, and families. I have a special interest in working with the neurodivergent population. In order to be able to say that and to put my name beside this niche, I want to gain your confidence by telling you that I do specialized trainings and certifications only from neurodivergent practitioners who have lived experience. I have a professional certificate in neurodivergent affirming practice. What about me as a person? Why do I care about this so much? I am obviously, as Julie has already let you know, the parent to a fabulous neurodivergent child. I have navigated the school system and community resources, which Paul has begun to give us a peek into. And I have also guided that child through to the post-secondary path. Okay, I'm ready, Tara. I'm about to share some statistics that are quite jarring, but I don't think we're allowed to look away from them. I think it's important for us to look at them and to really let them sit into our bones and give us a think about it. As of 2023, that's now, it's estimated that 77% of autistic adults are unemployed. We need to compare that to the average of those who live without disability at only 20%. Why is that happening? We need to look at environment as a contributing factor. And this is something that Julie has talked about. What is your environment in your place of employment? If you look at the quote at the bottom of this slide, 56% of those surveyed said they felt they were treated differently from their neurotypical colleagues. 55% said there's still a stigma attached to neurodivergence in their workplaces. And 42% reported that they had been the target of discrimination at work. Environment matters. Okay, Tara, next slide. So why are the rates of employment so low? So let's go back to before we even get into the workplace. Why is the number at 77%? I mean, that is alarming. We should all feel alarmed. First, the application process itself is overwhelming. Let's think about how everything has shifted online. You can't even walk into a place of employment and say, can I get an application? You're directed to portals and websites and what's your password and are you a bot and click on the motorcycles. I mean, the application can be quite overwhelming. The interview process itself is often quite ableist. People are not offered the questions ahead of time. We privilege extroversion. We privilege people who can give prolonged eye contact. We privilege neurotypical body language, and we privilege neurotypical speech patterns. When an individual shows up without these privileges, because they're just who they are often not even making it past the first round. This is devastating. This is exactly what happened to my son when he was trying to get part-time jobs. And it just made the world feel very unsafe for him. The world of part-time jobs feels so far from his grasp. It was really, really difficult to watch. Once a person actually has success, maybe getting through application and interview process, they might end up in a workplace where the accommodations are not even offered. And if they are, maybe they're not supported in any kind of way. I'd like to draw your attention to the stat at the bottom of this slide. Fewer than half of neurodivergent employees receive necessary workplace accommodations. That number is alarmingly even smaller for women, 23%. And this is only after they've asked for them, which means they've had to disclose. This is very alarming for me. It should be alarming for all of us. Ready for you, Tara? So what about the employees who make it past the application interview process? Why are they dropping out of the workforce? What's happening once they get in there? I'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about this well-known phenomenon in the world of psychology called neurodivergent burnout. It's very different than your regular burnout. Why do neurodivergent people experience this burnout? One, they're having to mask when they're at work. They're not having their social and sensory needs respected, or they're being minimized by others because they appear fine. They're not having access to appropriate levels of support and accommodation in their workspace. They get executive functioning fatigue following stresses and transitions. And what happens is the overall load exceeds their abilities. We get to burnout. What do I mean when I say masking? If you can direct your attention down to the bottom, I'll read it out for everyone. It's an oppressive and harmful coping mechanism, which many, if not all, in my opinion, as a psychotherapist, neurodivergent individuals use to avoid negative treatment and social rejection. With less masking, what we know is if individuals can be in the workplace and not feel that they have to be doing that at all times for everyone, their energy can be distributed productively, accommodations can be used if needed, and they won't always need them. And employers can finally benefit from the true skills of these individuals. And of course, like Julie said about bottom line, the economy gains more contributions. We all benefit. Okay, next slide. Tara? So I'll let you look at this slide yourself. This is devastating, and I'm speaking from a psychologist perspective. What do I see in my own practice when I'm working with neurodivergent clients? It's very, very distinct from an occupational burnout from working too many hours and burning the candle at both ends. It's often misdiagnosed by clinicians as being depression or anxiety. And that means that traditional treatments are not effective. They're not effective for folks suffering from neurodivergent burnout. It leads to shame. It leads to guilt. It leads to extended leaves. It leads to sick leaves. It leads to disability leaves. It leads to loss of employment. It leads to interpersonal difficulties and social isolation. There's so much shame in not being able to keep a job. We can all understand that. Tara, next slide. So for all the employers that are joining us tonight, I want to talk a little bit about what can be done to recruit neurodivergent employees and prevent workplace burnout so that we're not missing out on these talented and brilliant individuals. One, create an affirming interview and hiring process, like Julie explained, to attract neurodivergent individuals to the workplace. Two, offer mentoring and job shadowing to help integrate them into the workplace and have ongoing support. Is there a person, even like Paul said at York University, that is also neurodivergent that they can buddy up with in the workplace? Make neurodivergent affirming accommodation. Now, this is, I really want everyone to lean in for this part. Make neurodivergent affirming accommodations available to all your employees, irrespective of their neurotype, irrespective. What does this do? It reduces stigma, creates an inclusive environment and workplace culture. You are not putting the burden on the neurodivergent or disabled person to ask for their humanity. It is offered to everybody. There is no outing required. There is no, oh, must be nice, they're getting this today, because everyone's allowed to have it. I love the quote, neurodivergent employees are the canaries in the coal mine for how to build a healthy workplace. Isn't that beautiful? Is that not beautiful? And when possible, provide affirming training for all the employers and employees. We are all in this together and we all benefit when we have this mindset. I love this quote too by a neurodivergent psychologist that I've taken some training from. It's not autism and ADHD and all the other neurodivergent profiles that actually create the barriers for people in the workplace. It's discrimination and exclusion that does. Next slide, Tara. So here, and I know this is being recorded, and I think there's going to be copies of the slides available for sharing. I have hyperlinked some amazing resources, some beautifully affirming and uplifting and joyful and hopeful articles. And look at this list of job sites. Look at this list of job sites for neurodivergent folks where employers, there's someone else sharing another one, where employers are smart and keyed into how valuable neurodivergent brains are in workplaces. There is a long list of skills that a neurodivergent brain brings into a workplace. Black and white thinking can be great when you're looking at productivity. Literal thinking can be awesome when you're looking at productivity. Pattern recognition, the ability to see patterns where other brains don't. These are beautiful. Creativity, out of the box thinking. I mean, we need these folks in our workplaces as we move towards a more and more innovative society and world. Bring in the out of the box thinkers for the benefit of all of us. So I hope that whoever is able to access the slides after finds these links really useful. As Julie said, and as Paul said, my contact information is going to be made available if anyone would like to explore any of what I've shared in more depth. I am so open to hearing from any of you, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Louise. We actually have a couple questions. Do you
Sure.
mind?
Yeah, I'll take them now because I have a
taking
bit of
look
extra
there?
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Do you have to give, can I read them out loud? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Do you have to give employees assessments or proof of diagnosis? We've been asked that and seem like it's problematic to see the whole assessment. Okay, so I think what I'm meaning is, what I'm reading here is, I don't feel like I should have to give away my whole assessment to get accommodation. Am I getting this right? So what I've done for clients as a therapist, I'll share as a strategy, is I will write a one-page letter just indicating that they have a need for accommodation. I don't give away the details if it's not comfortable for the client. And I really focus on what the accommodation needs are and what the support needs are. And we don't focus on pathologizing the actual diagnosis or requiring proof. That's burdening the neurodivergent person. It's very ableist and I don't love it. If you're not in connection with the therapist, you could take a report that you do have with your diagnosis and you can redact any information that you're not comfortable with. What I mean by that is you plunk it into an Adobe software and you just black out any of the information that's not relevant. You're really focusing on what are my accommodation needs and what do I need to feel supported. I hope that answers. Okay. Rosemary, in addition to changes in the hiring process, could you give some examples of workplace accommodations? Yes. I'm allowed to wear noise canceling headphones when I'm at work. If you need my attention, please walk in front of me and get my attention. Do not come up behind me. Do not poke me. I need to work in a space that's closed. I can't be in an open space when I'm working. It's too distracting for me. If there's meetings, for example, where we're sitting around a round table and we all have to participate, you know, is there a possibility, there should be, for me to type in a chat box my ideas? If I can't respond in the moment in a real-time meeting, I would be happy to share with my colleagues, with my directors, my thoughts about the meeting after the meeting when I've had time to process and assimilate my thoughts. And then I will provide them for you. I would be happy to share these links. I think they're hyperlinked in the presentation, so hopefully they'll work when they get shared, but please find me if you can't get them to work afterwards. I will share them. Any other questions? Rosemary, was that enough? I'll have to think about it. I think any accommodation that you use in your everyday life that's reasonable and doesn't harm anybody else, why not? Why not? Like that canary in the coal mine thing. I mean, wouldn't all employees benefit from being able to put headphones on if they're in an open concept workspace? Yes, we would. We probably would. So hopefully that was helpful. Is there something to look at in terms of therapists? Yes. That's a great question, Rachel. I would really love to see in a bio, if you're looking at the bios of different therapists out there, I want to see the words neurodiversity affirming, not using pathologizing language. If you're looking at their specific skill sets, have they done training? Do they have certificates in working with neurodivergent individuals? Definitely want to be looking for those key terms. And if you're looking for one, please find me after and I'll help you. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. I will give it over to Kristen and Tom now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone who has presented so far. I am sure that everyone that is listening, like me, is learning so much and so grateful for everything that's being shared. I'm going to give you a quick overview of Camp Kirk. So my name is Kristen. Oh, there I am with all of the information there about me. My name is Kristen. I am the camp director at Camp Kirk. I have been the camp director for about a month and a half, so very brand new into this role, but I'm sure that some of you who are on this call, I have already spoken to, because I've had the opportunity to speak to lots of parents and children over this last month and a half and see the impact that Camp Kirk has on so many people's lives. You can see lots of stuff. I've been a teacher, worked in camping before, and have my master's in counseling as well. And I am also a parent to a neurodivergent child who just walked in the house. He is 16 years old and he is amazing. He's waving to me as he goes up the stairs. I texted him before, I'm like, come in quietly. And he did exactly as he was told, which makes complete sense because if you knew Jackson, that is who he is. So let me give you a brief rundown on kind of Camp Kirk and what we do in terms of working with our neurodiverse kids to help them reach their potential through recreational programming. And I really want to leave a good amount of time for Tom to talk because his story is so impactful. So there's a little bit more about Camp Kirk. And what I want to bring you through is both our LIT program and our transition to work program. All of these programs, look at all these amazing things we do at Camp Kirk. If you have any more questions about Camp Kirk after we're done our conversation today, you will have my email address. And I would love to set up a phone call and talk to you about whether Camp Kirk might be a good fit for your child. So let me talk to you about the LIT program. I think on the next slide we have like that. There it is. We have kind of the journey through Camp Kirk. We start with our kids who are campers, ages 6 through 16. And we get this opportunity to just to see these kids come alive at camp. I always say camp is this place where it's not just accepted that you're different. We actually love that you're different and quirky and unique, and you get to bring that into the camp environment. The other day, I was looking through our manual, getting ready for all of our staff who were hiring, and it cracked me up because some of the things that you ask employees to do, like bring costumes to work with you and like know a lot about Pokemon, like it's just a really funny space to be at camp. But what an opportunity to just really showcase all of the quirky and amazing things that you bring to the table. So that is as a camp. Then we start in after the age of 16 with our LIT programs. And really this is this opportunity to transition to work. And it runs in stages over 2 summers, with each year focusing on a different set of skills. So in the first year, you get to learn about program facilitation, general camp duties, shadowing program staff, mentorship in that space, learning how to facilitate activities, gaining this valuable experience in a place that you've loved, that has felt safe because you are a camper in that environment. They get to shadow, as I said, they get to develop in the second year, develop the skills they learned in the first year in an even more intensive way, working in areas that we know are a good fit for them, where they get the opportunity to talk about, like, what do I love? What works well for me at camp? Furthering their skill set and working with cabin groups, counseling, all of those kind of things. We get to intentionally model teamwork, communication, and then these skills alongside, and learn from each other about what it looks like to be an amazing camp counselor, or a camp cook, or a camp like program leader, canoeer. Yeah, so they get to receive mentorship, support from senior staff, helping them to build these life skills and work skills. Throughout, there's consistent check-ins, formal evaluations formal, but back and forth, where we get to say, this is where I really saw you shine. These are the areas that I think we can improve, but this is how we're going to work through that together. And again, this isn't just for our kids who come up through the program. It's for all of our staff. They all have the opportunity to learn in this way, and it's good for everyone, which I think we've heard several times. What's good for one is often good for all. And so it gives us this opportunity to really showcase that in this space. Yeah, and being able to highlight the strengths, but also to say, these are some areas for growth, and let's figure that out together. It's not shameful. We all have areas of growth. Even in our interview process, we ask, like, how can I support you when you come to camp to grow? And I think that's such an important question. Then we leave our LIT years and we transition to staff, which is a huge jump for many of our people. You go from being a camper to having this different set of expectations on you, different social dynamics, because suddenly you're a member of the staff, and that looks different than when you were a camper. And there we have a mentorship program, again, that fully integrates participants into a staff team, providing them with the same training and responsibility as all of our team members. So everybody receives the same training, but we intentionally think about it from what will help our campers who are neurodiverse. What will help each of them, what will help our staff, and then kind of integrate that into our training. As well, we pay attention to who is coming back as a returning camper and receive mentorship directly from the assistant camp director and the camp director, placed in counseling trios if that's helpful, wherever additional support is needed. And this structured approach that everybody knows how things are going to go forward helps to ease any kind of transition, stress, or anxiety in some ways. It doesn't get rid of it. We can't get rid of it, but it does help to ease that and ensure the success of our employees who are neurodiverse, who are bringing so much into our camping environment. Not only the skills that they bring, but who they are. And the fact that our little ones who are 6 years old walking into camp for the first time can look at our counselors, our kitchen staff, our care teams, and say, I recognize something in them that I see in myself, and see the possibility. And Tom's story will talk about that as well, about how incredible that being seen and being seen in someone else, how that changes kids' lives. I could go on and on about the different things we do, but I really want to give time to Tom. So I'm going to stop talking now and pass it over to Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm joining you from Treaty 8 territory, which is in rural Alberta. However, I'm from where most of you guys are from Toronto. I'm a teacher here, and I live in Edmonton with my husband, Oh. When my student asks me how long I've been teaching, and I tell them that I've only been at it for 5 years, they often look at me with puzzlement and ask me why it took so long for me to settle into this career. The answer to that question is so complex that I'm not even totally sure how to explain it myself, let alone to a bunch of junior high kids separated from me by more than 20 years. The truth is, the path to gaining a career for someone who's neurodivergent is seldom straightforward. All of the systems intended to guide us to success are intended for so-called normies, and much of the time work against people like me. For example, how was I someone who was told by his elementary school principal that he was unlikely to graduate from high school, supposed to dream of having any job, let alone the career I have now? How was I supposed to dream of teaching literacy when none of my teachers could figure out how to teach me how to form a sentence? How could any kid used to feeling strange and inadequate have any dreams at all, let alone concrete plans guiding them to a future life they can be proud of and invite worthy people into? Thankfully, there's Camp Kirk. I'm literally the first person on both sides of my family tree that anyone remembers graduating high school, let alone university or college. It was at Camp Kirk that I first heard of education beyond high school, because at least at that time, all the staff there were university or college students. I remember meeting staff members who, when they weren't at camp, were studying things that were, I thought, only the subjects of documentaries I'd watch with my grandparents or read books about in secret. Because where I'm from, kids don't admit to being smart. One staff member who impacted me the most in this regard was our ecology instructor, who we called Woody. One afternoon, we were at the dock in the Bucky Mucky Swamp, and I fell in, ass over tea kettle. I'm such a loser, I said, embarrassed by my clumsiness. I fail at everything. I don't believe you. None of us do, said Woody. You're very smart, and I've seen you do many things right. Although I didn't know it at the time, Woody was the first person who made me feel welcome and accepted at camp. It must have worked, because in total, I spent 11 summers there. Camp Kirk was, for that entire time, the only place where I could be myself. I discovered, among other things, that I'm good at making people laugh, and that I'm good with kids. In my non-camp life, I didn't have the skills to gain the kind of success that came to me so easily at camp. Camp Kirk was, and as far as I can tell, still is, a nurturing place for kids like me to be themselves, to be as odd or quirky as they want to be. What it didn't do at that time was provide the nurturing entry into the work world, the post-secondary education world, or whatever world our campers chose to inhabit. Camp Kirk got the wheels spinning, but it was up to me to find the traction. The last time I was at Camp Kirk was 2009, and obviously a lot's changed for me since then. Moving to Alberta, working like a fiend in the oil and gas field, marrying the right person, and making good financial decisions helped me find that traction. Nowadays, I'm a full-time teacher / inclusive education lead. I think you guys in Ontario call them CERTs, with plans to do a master's degree in the fall. On the weekends, I help my husband run a small business with 3 locations and around 30 employees in Edmonton that we own together. It turns out that Woody was right. I am pretty smart and I have a lot to offer. No Camp Kirk kid should believe otherwise. Okay, I believe Deirdre, that's you now.
Thank you so much, Tom. You know, I'm speechless from listening to your story. And I know when we talked before, you said it wasn't a linear path for you, and that there were struggles on the way. And I think as parents of neurodivergent kids, that's something that we need to hear, that, you know, part of the journey is learning and figuring things out. And I'm just so glad that Woody was there for you to give you the encouragement that you needed and be there for you at that time. And it's amazing. How many years ago did Woody make that comment to you and you still remember his exact words?
Woody is a she.
Oh, she.
Yeah, that was in 1993, the
Wow.
first year of the camp.
Amazing. So I'd love to, before we before we go to the last couple of slides, I know everyone on the call has been really great at listening. There's been a lot of information shared. There's been so much learning. We'd love to open it up to people on the webinar to ask your questions. Whoever it is, if you can just put in the chat who you would like to address that question to, or it could be a general question that you don't have a particular speaker. But we really wanted to make sure we made enough time so that you had the opportunity to ask questions. So I will turn it over to our audience. And Claire, do you want to read out the questions? Because I think that's kind of a good way of everybody hearing.
Yeah, happy to. We do have a hand up as well. I'm just trying to find it. There it is. All right. Oh, asked to unmute.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Claire.
Hey, how's it going? Who is this?
This is Theodore. I used
Oh,
to be at the
hi.
camp I was at the camp for about 4 years.
Aha.
And I don't know if Tom remembers me, but I was the one that always had the glasses, always was running to the staff, always getting scared, always afraid of bees. I don't know if Tom remembers the guy who was always afraid of the bees.
Sure do.
Oh my gosh. You remember me, eh?
Yes, not clearly, but I remember, I definitely remember the bees.
Theo Spear?
Yeah,
So long to hear from you, Tom. Good grief.
yeah, awesome to hear from you, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Camp Kirk's changed me a lot. It's just been, I mean, I've been going through a rough road over my years, but Camp Kirk's been teaching me a lot. I've been transitioning from group home to group home through the years, and now I'm living at home. I can't live on my own for any particular reason. I'm kind of not stable to do it, but I've always tried to be semi-independent living, which is finally getting my wish. So, when you brought up the ecology, we had a lot of ecology counselors, didn't we? There was Woody, then who's the guy that we had for the in 97. Do you remember? Tom?
No, I don't.
Okay. You remember Jody, right? Our swim counselor?
Yes, of course. That was a
Yeah.
long time ago. Wow.
Yeah, no. Me and her still keep in contact sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, just you sharing your story just brings me back to the good old days, man.
Yeah, thanks so much, Theodore.
No problem, buddy.
Mhm.
And I got a question for Kristen, our camp director, the new camp director, if possible.
I
Kristen,
am
where?
ready for your question.
I did write this in the chat, and I was told by Claire to email you this, but I would prefer to talk to you like over this, if
You
possible.
know what? I was gonna say what the best thing is if you want to chat is you can give me a call. So if you email me, we can talk.
Okay. Do you guys I assume everybody just mostly has the iPhone now then, right?
I missed that. Say that one more
You have the
time.
iPhone now, right?
I do. I have the camp phone. So you can call that number.
Okay. Would it be possible to iMessage you and then maybe call over that?
100%.
Perfect. Can we talk after the meeting? Are
We
you okay with that?
definitely- I will be.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Theodore, if you want to get in contact with me, like you mentioned, you can just fire me an email and we
All
can
right,
go.
what's your email, buddy?
Yeah.
What's your email, Tom?
I believe it's in my intro card or something like that.
Okay.
I'll just put it in the chat right now.
All right, thanks, buddy.
No problem.
It'd be nice to hear from you, man. It's been so long.
For sure.
Thanks
Alright.
so much, Theodore.
No problem,
There you go, buddy.
Another question in the chat. I just want to make sure we get to it. Someone is wondering, is there support for neurodivergent, genderqueer children out there? The intersectionality is tricky at times. So I don't know which of our panelists is ready to talk to that. Paul, perhaps?
I feel like I can help with that just because it's something that comes up a lot as students enter into high school. Biggest thing is feeling, I guess, accepted and supported by their community. It doesn't necessarily have to be the broader community, although that would be ideal. But things like GSAs, gay straight alliances, generally are a great place to start in terms of finding their people. Biggest thing, like acceptance and validation at home, I guess. Just not dismissing and not sort of invalidating those things at home goes a really, really long way. Working at the hospital, I often get to meet kids who don't have that kind of support, and a lot of them say even just having even if one adult validated that for them, they would have a more positive outcome. So I would say that encourage them to encourage them to either join a GSA or to start one and to find their community that way. So I hope that helps.
I think that was great. Thanks, Paul. We have another question here
Oh,
from
sorry, Tara, can I interrupt and add something to Paul's comment? Is that okay?
Yeah.
For the question about how to get support for neurodivergent genderqueer children, if the person who asked that question and anyone else who's interested in that particular question has a pen and paper, write down the name Our Landing Place Counseling Therapy. It's called Our Landing Place. It's going to give you an example of what a neurodivergent queer affirming therapy collective should look like. It's going to give you a beautiful example of what kind of language you're looking for, what kind of training you should be looking for. If you can go and look at that site, you're really going to get a good idea of what your child deserves in their care and support. And I would say that finding, and we've talked about this throughout this presentation, finding care providers who actually represent the child is, like Paul just said, so much power, so much power, so much affirmation. So it's OUR Landing Place. They are based in the Maritimes, but they can see people across Canada. And even if they can't see you in your particular province, or if you're outside of Canada, you're going to be able to use that site as a beautiful template for what you should be looking for if you're looking for this kind of care.
And Louise, I think Claire and I are acting as your secretaries here because we have been your pen and paper.
Okay.
Claire has posted it in the presenter chat, and I answered the question
Awesome.
in text
Thank
form.
you
So if
so
you
much.
look at the Q&A, you'll be able to see that even if you didn't have a pen and paper handy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. We have time for a couple more questions. So another question is, how can workplaces better recognize and address the impact on the neurodiverse community when accommodations are inadequate or not provided? Louise?
I was going to say.
I'm going to go for it. I'm like, is it going to be me? Well, like I said about the canaries in the coal mine, thank you for asking this if you're actually an employer. Bravo. Thank you. That canary in the coal mine mindset, if you have, and to speak to Julie's idea, what are the core values of your workplace? And is it clearly communicated to everyone in that workplace? That immediately eliminates the idea that your accommodations are inadequate because they're offered to everybody. If someone has disclosed to you or named that they need accommodations because they are neurodivergent, have check-ins. Have check-ins. Are we meeting? Are you feeling supported? Are your accommodations being met? I want to hear your feedback. And that doesn't mean like sitting across from a boardroom table and staring them down and asking, are you feeling supported? Do you want to send me an email? Do you want to send me a text telling me if I'm getting it right? Like just check-ins. Like, I see you. I know it's hard to be in a workplace. Are we doing a good job? Giving them the invitation instead of putting the burden on the employee to raise the flag when they've lived in a society all along that has singled them out and made them feel oppressed whenever they have waved a flag. So how are you going to change the whole workplace environment so that that is not stigmatized? I hopefully that's a good answer.
I think that was great. There's a few other questions in the chat, in the Q&A, but I think some of them are probably best if we respond later, including some resources and things like that. So what I'll do is after the webinar, I'll be circulating the presentation and the resources and the emails of our panelists. And I'll include some of these questions, answers to those questions that.
And we also have a hand up. Do we have time, Tara, to do one more here?
Sure, I think one more.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Sophia.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I am program officer with the Cree Board of Health. Sometimes we send some of our kids to Camp Kirk. Yeah, like kudos to your work. They come back and there's definitely an impact made. I see a further opportunity for, developing those life skills to, for employment and social interactions by potentially providing the opportunity for some teens or young adults to be counselor at Camp Kirk. But I'm wondering, does someone have to attend the camp as a camper before, like, is it a prerequisite to be able to apply for a job as a counselor and get that further development later on?
That is a great question. For our LIT program, we have limited spaces, unfortunately. We've only got 8 spots as our program is right now. So we do prioritize our returning campers for the LIT program. But when it comes to staff, everyone is welcome. So you don't have to have been to Camp Kirk. You don't have to have any real specialized certifications. We hire people who have a good head on their shoulders and a good heart. And they've got to be 19 or older. And after that, there's no special certifications. We do the training. We do an 11-day training with lots of seminars and different practices and team building things. So for those older young adults that are looking for opportunities, we actually still have some spots open for this summer. So check out our jobs page and see if there might be a fit there for anyone you know who's looking for a summer gig. Because yeah, anyone can join our staff team.
Okay, so like neurodiverse,
Yeah,
friendly, and yeah, like the same things that we've been talking about so far.
totally. A good chunk of our staff are neurodiverse. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them are. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to we've come to the end of our evening together, and I know we've only touched the very tip of the iceberg on this super important topic. We are committed to keeping the education and the advocacy going. And if those of you that are part of the call, if you want to still get involved with Camp Kirk and get involved with us in another way, please feel free to reach out. You know, if you go to the next slide, Tara, there's lots of opportunities to get involved in events, in volunteering, and helping us spread the word. I just want to thank everybody that was part of our first webinar tonight. As I mentioned, you have our commitment that this is the first of many. I also want to really, really thank our speakers. You know, thank you so much for giving of your time, all the preparation work that you've put in. Tom, thank you so much for sharing your story. It really, you know, hit me right in the heart, and your words, I will carry them for a long time to come. And I think you've also really highlighted the need for us to continue this work, and that this is really important work to help kids transition to higher education and the workplace. So again, thank you so much to everybody. We will be back in touch with the slides and emails, and I really appreciate everybody's support and help with putting this webinar together. Have a great night, everyone.